Hello, I'm Isabel, and this is From Mud. Like a lotus flower floating effortlessly on the surface in all its beautiful glory, it is a symbol of resilience. Because that same gorgeous flower grew from the icky, sticky muck and mud just below the surface. Something beautiful grows from something dark and cold and unyielding. It grows from mud. This channel is all about resilience and wellness in the face of life's challenges. Thanks for joining. Salut mes amis, c'est moi Isabelle. Thank you for being back on my channel From Mud. So if you have been listening so far, thank you so much, first of all. I want to continue with the series I've been working on, which is just telling the story of Justin's illness and how he moved through that, how we all moved through that as a family, what was going on during the time, because even when life gets hard, and I think anybody can relate to this, but when life gets hard, it still is moving forward. You're still doing all the things you would normally be doing if life was just being nicer to you. So just wanted to share our journey and how we made it through, where we're at now. And I do like to just inject a little bit of health and wellness since I have been working in the field of health and wellness for the past 13 years in community and clinical health spaces as a health coach, a health educator. I've done a lot of coaching on nutrition, exercise, weight loss, or other weight management concerns, anything related to blood pressure, diabetes, stress management, anything lifestyle related. I've been working with people one-on-one in groups, as well as creating materials for these things for the past 13 years. I have a bachelor's degree in health science with an emphasis on health promotion, disease prevention, and I have a master certified health education specialist credential, as well as a certified diabetes care and education specialist credential. I'm a certified fitness trainer. And with that being said, I'm going to get going on today's episode. So today, it's episode 3 of my story. And again, I know that I mentioned in the first episode that I wanted to kind of go in chronological order of like year 1, year 2 of Justin's battle. But I'm just following the flow of how this information comes out and how I'm explaining things. And so today I want to get going with our 3rd episode. I'm still in Justin's first year of cancer, and I'm going to try to plan these episodes out in some way so I can kind of stay on track. So I'm going to cover, we're still in Justin's first year. I mentioned the cruise, so I'm going to kind of pick up from there and go through until the birth of our daughter, which she was born on February 13th. So we get back from the cruise. He is on Cabo now, and he was still doing the infusions. I actually went back and read through all of our text messages through that time frame, just to try and gain a little more insight and try and recall some of the things we were talking about and just see what would come up in my memory. So that first year, again, he found out in June. Our cruise was in October. So I'm kind of talking from there through the holidays and through the birth of our daughter in February. And I did want to just mention that, like, when we first found out that he had cancer, we literally didn't know if he was going to make it through to the holidays. We didn't know if he would make it through to see the birth of his daughter. He was immediately joined this Facebook group for his medications, and that was a mixed bag. So there was a lot of positivity and hope in there and support, but there was also a lot of scary stuff that he was looking at. A lot of people with his same exact situation who literally only survived a couple months. So the idea of him not making it through to Christmas or not making it through to see his daughter being born was a very real possibility. And yeah, it was a challenge. And Justin was the type of person who, I think I mentioned, he was pretty reserved about sharing things. He kept his cards pretty close to his chest, besides with me. Because of that, he didn't even really want a lot of people to know. I'm sure that I told him, like, I have to tell some people that I'm very close to. But he didn't want to tell a lot of people. By the time he actually passed, I had shared his passing, and there were quite a few people who didn't even know he was sick. So he didn't want that to be something people focused on. He didn't want to ever be, like, what's the word? Like, he never wanted to be fussed over. He just didn't like that type of attention. He didn't want people over worrying about him or just bringing things up to him. He also probably thought it could affect his mental state if he had people constantly being all like so sad and not knowing what to say and things like that. So he kept it pretty private, and he wanted me to keep it pretty private the whole time, basically, up until it was so difficult to keep private, and I had to eventually make like a Facebook group for just our family and friends so that I could keep people updated. But that he only allowed me to do that once it was very obvious that he was ill and that I needed that for my own mental health, to be able to share and talk about things with the people who were closest to him. So at first, yeah, he did at first get a good amount of support, and the Mayo Clinic was awesome. They have a whole alternative health area where you can do acupuncture, massage therapy. They have a ton of groups and support groups. They have dietitians, health coaches, all kinds of additional providers that were supporting Justin right off the bat. He tried to do therapy. He couldn't really find the right therapist. He didn't try super hard, but then again, the guy was going through such a crazy thing. Like when we first found out, and we kind of talked about this towards the end, once it became clear to me that his death was imminent, it was going to be soon, it came a bit as a shock to me, just because I thought we would have one additional Christmas with him. I thought he would make it at least to his birthday, which was November 30th. And once I realized, like, no, he's probably not going to. This is probably leading to the end in a relatively short period of time. Once I kind of realized that, it was like just really accepting and coming to terms with that in a very real way, like, the feeling of like death is imminent. And when I was kind of explaining that to him, he was like, yeah, I mean, for you guys, it's like you're accepting it now. But when I first found out, that's what I went through. So he was kind of saying when he first found out, it felt like his death was imminent and he was immediately accepting it. And that's what that first year, the first full year really of his cancer, from June 2022 until June 2023, there was a lot of physical battle going on as well, but it was a major mental battle, just the negative thoughts, the anxiety, because he's reckoning with his death. He's in his mind, he's dying soon. He could be dead by Christmas. He could not meet his daughter. He's starting to just go through, like, imagine you're told you're going to die maybe by the end of the year, and all the things that would flood to your brain of like, what do I need to do to prepare, who, like, and you have your kid on the way, your toddler, and your wife who's pregnant. You're trying to prepare, think in your mind, what can I do to prepare to make things as good as I can for my family. That was his main concern. And then at the same time, yeah, you're just like, oh my God, I'm dying, I'm gonna die. He's going through that in his mind, he's accepting it. So by the time he really was gonna die, he was like, I already accepted this the first year when I found out. That was me working through that and accepting my fate. So he was already at peace with everything by the time his time came. In fact, I would say, like, by the time our daughter came, he had already worked through all of the really hard thoughts that he was first having when he found out. I'm not saying he was like at peace with it. I think he was just kind of like, I want to go as long as I can and stay with my kids as long as I can, be here for them, and me, of course, too. But obviously the kids were our beacon of light for everyone involved. We all had a focus. Me, Justin, his mom, my dad, my sisters, and their mom, and our friends, our neighbors, everyone, our family around us, people who knew what was going on. The focus was always our son and our daughter who was on the way, who at first we didn't know was a girl. But whenever things were getting hard, whenever we would talk about the future, we would always have them in mind. And the answer to every question was always, whatever we need to do to make life better or good or as good as possible for the kids, that's our focus. That's what we are looking at. That's what we need to do. And that helped us to just keep pushing forward, to kind of compartmentalize a little bit, because, you know, you're grown up and you kind of have to do that. You have to just put yourself to the side sometimes, make sure the kids are okay. And then, you know, later when you're able to, you take care of yourself. A lot of compartmentalizing, especially for me. And I already had a lot of practice compartmentalizing. So when this happened, that's probably how I was able to cope and take care of everybody as much as I could, because I was compartmentalizing that, plus like the positive thinking thing that is just innate, the optimism that's innate to my personality. Those two things kind of help me get through that. And I have a very strong support system that is most people are at a distance. And I have that support system I stay connected to regardless of where I've moved or lived. So I have emotional support. I also had a great therapist at the time who I was already seeing from that previous summer. So I was already with her for a year when we found out about Justin. So she was with me through my mom passing and other challenges that I had in my life. And then when that happened with Justin, she was with me through until a little after the birth of my daughter. So I had a great therapist. I had great friends and chosen family, and a few of my actual family around as well. And Justin too, but I didn't want to lean on him too much because I wanted him to be able to lean on me with what he was going through. And yeah, so that's kind of like what our support system looked like at the time. That was kind of like the mental challenges that, so Justin was having those mental challenges that whole first year. And then I think I might have mentioned, but when we did go to this one doctor's appointment with Dr. Ho at Mayo Clinic, and he's not there anymore at Mayo Clinic, but there was one time we had met with him, and he basically reassured Justin, you will be making it to the birth of your daughter, so don't worry about that, and I will tell you when you have less than 6 months to live. You will make it through the holidays. You will make it to see your daughter. I will tell you when your time is imminent. So that was such a big burden and a big lift off of Justin's shoulders, just knowing that he's going to make it through the holidays. He's going to see his daughter. That was like one of the biggest concerns he had in those first few months with all the unknowns. That was really helpful. And then I would say, like, I know I mentioned that he did pretty well on the Cabo and that he didn't have some of the really gross symptoms, not gross, but the really bad stuff. But I was kind of going through the text messages and my announcements on the Facebook group and the different things that I could find from around that time. And I was kind of reminded that he actually was battling right away. Well, first of all, he was battling that weight loss even before the diagnosis, because obviously the diagnosis didn't really do anything to change that. So he was continuing to lose weight. That was a constant battle. He was a little over 200 pounds, maybe close to 210 at his heaviest. He was about 5'9", and at his lightest, this would have been in October of 2023 when a bunch of bad stuff happened and he had to go to the hospital. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe his weight was about 130 at that time. So he lost a ton of weight, and it was kind of a continuous battle for him. So he was very concerned about the weight and the weight loss, and he started working with a dietitian right away at Mayo Clinic. And that was helpful, but it was just such a challenge. If you or anyone you know has ever struggled with appetite loss, it is such a weird thing, and it's so mysterious because there's nothing you can do sometimes to make yourself want to eat. So trying to force yourself to eat when you have no appetite it makes you sick. It makes you throw up. It's just such a repulsion. I remember my mom going through the same thing with her illness. She had severe loss of appetite. And then sometimes it's like if she would force herself to eat, she would throw up. And it's almost like it would train your mind to be scared to eat, because then you're like, I'm going to throw up. So you're averse to eating. It was a whole cycle. Justin was living out that same thing more than 2 years, but the 2 years after his diagnosis, as well as the 6 months prior to the diagnosis, he was already starting to have that loss of appetite. He was losing weight regardless of what he was eating. And then once the diagnosis happened, he started losing more weight because of the depression, not feeling like eating. So it was like a constant battle. We went through so many different weight gain drinks. We tried, we got boosts. I think that boost is what we kind of ended on. That's what he ended up. It was like the very high calorie boosts, and I think they were like 500 calories per boost. We were fortunate that we could buy those things. There's people who are underweight trying to gain weight who can't afford those, and you're trying to just do it the old-fashioned way and just eat more calories. I've worked with people who are underweight trying to gain weight in my years as a health coach. It's not a super common goal that I tend to work on, but I have worked with some people on it, and it's very, very challenging, extremely challenging to gain weight when you're underweight and you're falling behind, like how Justin was, because of the cancer constantly trying to get fed and the treatments that we were doing with the immunotherapy not having as strong of an impact that would have been needed to slow that cancer growth down. So it's extremely difficult. We were very fortunate that we could afford those types of high calorie drinks so that because drinking was a little easier. It was harder to eat stuff and eat the same number of calories through food, regular food. So those very high calorie boosts were such a major part of his treatment plan. and it was something he was very dedicated to, and that he would always try to eat something, to eat a couple of those, 1 to 2 of those boosts as much as he can. Literally, it would make him sick sometimes. But I really admired how hard he tried for that, because watching my mom go through it and her not be able to get those things in. Well, first of all, I don't think we really knew about those beverages for her. Like we didn't really, well, that's a whole side story. I just wasn't present to watch my mom go through her illness the way that I was with Justin. So I didn't see her struggling, except for when she'd come visit or I would go visit, and then it would be like, wow, mom's in really rough shape. But I didn't have the conceptualization I did with Justin, because I was watching him on a daily basis. So I didn't know that my mom struggled with her being underweight and having no appetite. Some of the similar things that Justin struggled with as well, like the anemia. There were some similar challenges that kind of intersected with both of their things. But I really just admired that Justin tried super hard to make sure that he was always drinking his boosts. He was always trying to combat that weight loss. And it was a constant, very difficult battle. So during this time, the weight loss was a big part of his challenge. The other things, especially after Cabo, there were some other things that got worse. It kind of seems like with each new treatment, there's like a new level of the challenges and the symptoms that he was already experiencing. They just kind of worsened. So like off the bat with the immunotherapy, again, I said he pretty much handled it pretty well, but my memory's a little foggy. And at that time, he was definitely battling fatigue. He was definitely battling that weight loss. He was definitely battling pain in his liver and kidneys that he could feel all the time. He was definitely battling anxiety and panic. And he also was battling nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation. Some version of all of those things were kind of always around. And each time he would get a new treatment, it would make it worse. So like when he got on the Cabo, then yeah, he had all that fatigue. Like he pretty much napped every day. He was always a person who enjoyed naps, but he would always kind of take like a power nap, and then he'd be like, I'm fine, I'm great. And once he had his cancer and the treatments and things, it was a constant battle. He was tired all the time. He was constantly tired. There was no point during those 2 years where he woke up and felt energized. Well, I can't say there was 0 times, but it was probably very minimal. The nausea, that was constant. He had to take Zofran. Eventually we landed on Zofran. He tried a lot of different things for that. He used to take these things called Queasy drops, and they're like little cough drops, and they're common for people on chemo. So he was battling, like I said, that a lot of gastrointestinal things, because these medications strongly affect those areas. So most people are going to experience those very unpleasant gastrointestinal symptoms and battles. And Justin definitely did. So right off the bat, he was fighting those things. Then when we did the Cabo, that got worse. He also, like I said, he had that whitening of the hair, or I don't know if I mentioned this, but like another side effect was the whitening of the hair. And that really did happen. His hair looked, he was already like a salt and pepper kind of guy, but he had the white hair. It was going really white during the time he was on Cabo. And then he was on Cabo through, I think he was on Cabo from like that time, October 2022, all the way through basically October of 2023. So he was definitely battling a lot of those daily struggles that if you saw him, you wouldn't necessarily know that he was battling those things. Again, he would keep his cards close to his chest. He didn't want people to fret over him. So he would always present as a very, as doing okay, And I think there's something to be said about people who are fighting those invisible illnesses. If anyone's ever heard of the spoons theory, I really like to talk about this with people who are either they live life with some sort of chronic illness that may seem invisible to people. There's certain things, there's certain conditions, or just different abilities that people might have that are obvious when you see the person, that they may be, like, for example, if someone is in a wheelchair and has an oxygen tank, like my mom was towards the end of her life, you can see that that person is ill. They look ill. They look like, when you would see my mom, you can tell that she's not well. When you looked at Justin in his first year of cancer, he looked totally normal. In fact, he looked good because he had lost weight and he was a little overweight prior to that. So he was looking pretty good, but that was not the type of weight loss you want. And he was undergoing all these mini battles, the fatigue, the nausea, the pain, the constipation, the vomiting, the diarrhea, all those things. Just the random bouts of pain, the anxiety, all these things that he was battling on a normal basis, but nobody else aside from the inner circle knew he was going through. And I just want to affirm anyone who's listening, if you have an immunocompromised condition, you have another kind of chronic illness, you have depression, you have fibromyalgia, lupus, chronic fatigue. There's so many different things I could mention right now, but if you are one of those people who lives with a chronic illness or another condition that is chronic or gets progressively worse and no one sees your struggle, I just want to affirm you and say that that's messed up. I know a lot of people don't want that attention, but I just want to say that I see you. I know you're out there. I've worked with many people with these conditions, and I've been able to really hear and try to understand and try to visualize and imagine the pain that one experiences and the loneliness that one experiences when you have a condition like that and you live that condition every single day and nobody can understand how difficult that is for you. You look normal and healthy, but inside you feel like you want to give up and it's the end, and that you wish it was the end, but you're young and you have all these years, and just that loneliness and that dread of having to pick yourself up every single day and having to do everyday tasks that seem easy for other people, but for you, it takes an enormous amount of strength and energy to be able to do. So I just want to take this opportunity to affirm you and tell you that you are a warrior too, and you are battling these battles, and it's not fair. It's not fair. And yet it's life, and these are the cards that people are dealt sometimes. And I don't know what you tell yourself to get through it, but keep going. I know Justin did. Justin never gave up. He always battled. He battled until there was nothing else he could do. Until he was literally saying gibberish to me on his final day of life. So keep going. Keep pushing. Life is hard. Life is hard sometimes. Life is beautiful sometimes. It's kind of a mixed bag here on earth, but life is definitely hard, and I believe truly in my soul that life is hard for everybody, and nobody gets to live life here on earth unscathed. and nobody gets to have an easy life. Even if it looks like they have an easy life, I really stand by my belief that it's still not an easy life. Okay, so basically after the cruise, that was October, so November would have been like Thanksgiving, Justin's birthday, which we did an NBA game, and just again to paint the picture, like this first year of cancer, even though it was this crazy devastating thing that basically dropped a bomb on our life that was like, for the next whoever knows how long, you will be living in the unknown. We couldn't plan trips. And again, I mentioned like Justin and I love to travel. We always envisioned a lot of adventure and travel and movement with our kids. So to not be able to plan trips because we don't know what he's going to be like in 3 months, that was such a joy suck. Like it sucked a lot of the joy out of my life. Like as I reflect, it's like not being able to have things to look forward to made those 2 years so much more challenging and painful. And I really kind of realized during that time what a blessing it is to have things to look forward to have trips on the horizon. I took that for granted before that. So I don't know if anyone happens to be in this type of situation or something similar, but if there's any way that you can plan things, if you're the type of person like we are, where you enjoy having things on the horizon and that is a source of joy for you and things to look forward to, but in general, having things to look forward to, that would have been good for us to make happen. Again, we were just moving through the best we could. This was a fully unknown situation, and there were so many unknowns almost the whole time. So we just did the best that we could. But looking back, if I could have somehow made sure that we had things to look forward to, even small things, and being really intentional about that, that might have helped with just kind of morale and joyful factors. But we were actually still quite busy. We never stopped. We found out that he had cancer and life kept moving on. We were both still working. He was doing his infusions and still working. He went on disability, I think that October 22, he went on, 2022, he went on short-term disability leave, which eventually turned into long-term disability, which again, we're very fortunate that he had an employer that supported that for him. He was in that support group, those cancer support groups that he was in on Facebook, and he would hear so many stories. We could have been so much worse off. There were people in developing countries that had no access to the level of medicine that we had access to. They had no money. They could have been the same situation as me, a spouse with the partner in this situation, but they're in the Philippines or something like that, or Lithuania, and they don't have the funds or the access to the care that they really needed. Those were heartbreaking stories. I mean, our story is heartbreaking, but it's something I've learned is like, it can always be worse. It can always be harder, and it is harder for somebody out there, which is why there's always something to be grateful for, because again, it could be worse. So you may as well be grateful for the blessings that you do have, because nothing is promised in this life. No one said this life was going to be fair, and no one said you're promised or entitled to anything. So gratitude is a central value of mine for myself and for my family, and I hold it up so high because it is so potent and so powerful to helping cope with life that is just hard. Life on earth is hard. Gratitude helps balance the scales even just a little bit. So life is still going on. You know, Justin finds out his diagnosis. We have to throw our 2-year-old a birthday party. And again, you're doing these things and you're trying to act like normal. Like life isn't just completely uprooted, you know. So we have kid birthday parties we're going to. were, Justin was so excited for baby girl. And especially once we found out that it was going to be a girl, because we were hoping we would get a boy and a girl. And we were so excited when we found out it was a girl. We would have loved anyone who came to us. We would have been so excited and grateful, but it was extra special because I just feel like there's a lack of girls on Justin's side of the family. So for us to have a little girl, it was just nice to have a girl present on that side. So we were excited to give everybody a girl, and we had agreed on the name so easily, not like our first baby. We had a hard time with boy names, but we agreed right away. We always knew we liked that name for a girl. So like things were coming easy. Thankfully I had a very easy pregnancy. I started to show right away, mostly because I still had my belly from my first kid. But I had, thankfully, a very easy pregnancy. I had a relatively easy first pregnancy as well, but the second one was especially easy and chill. And I just was, because I knew what to expect, I was able to like enjoy it. And the pregnancy wasn't a factor, as much of a complicating factor to this situation, because I wasn't going through some of the hard stuff that a lot of people go through in pregnancy. Everything went smoothly for my pregnancy and even the birth, which I'll get to later. Everything was smooth. Everything was going smooth until the end, when I was so big and uncomfortable and I couldn't find comfortable ways of being. But other than that, all the way up until basically the end, I had a pretty easy pregnancy, thankfully. And we just adored this baby girl. And I wanted to just share one really sweet memory. So when my son was a baby, I used to sing him a lot of Beatles songs. I'm a big Beatles fan, and I used to sing a ton of Beatles songs to him, and a couple other things, like a couple Spanish songs that I would sing to him. And I still sing those same songs, some of them, to him, and they're his songs. I wanted to do the same, and I actually recorded about 10 minutes of different songs that I used to sing, and like I would leave it with a babysitter to play as a lullaby. With this baby, I remember, I think we were coming back from a Mayo Clinic appointment. I'm pretty sure. I don't remember exactly the time frame. I was definitely pregnant. I remember I was driving, and I wonder if it was one of the infusions, and that was always crazy to show up to his appointments with him, because at some point I did need to start coming with him regularly to his appointments. There was a point in time where he was able to do a lot by himself, and then there came a point where he really needed help. I don't know if we were at that point yet, but I was definitely pregnant, and I had come with him, and I remember distinctly being at one of his infusions, and he was very excited to show me off to like all the nurses and stuff. And Justin was a very magnetic person. I don't know why I'm getting emotional thinking about this, but he was so lovable. He was very likable. He was easy to get along with. He was easy to talk to. He was fun. In high school, he was voted, for his superlative, he was voted simply irresistible. And he freaking hated it when I would bring that up, because I would make fun of him. Not make fun of him, but it bothered him because, again, he wasn't a person who liked a lot of attention on him. He didn't really like the spotlight. He was too much of a troublemaker, like a mischievous type of troublemaker. Not a bad troublemaker, but he was mischievous. And he liked to function in that mischief in the shadows. And so I think he didn't like the spotlight on him in a lot of different ways, especially if it was like overly complimentary. He liked it one-on-one, like if it was me specifically telling him how great he was, how much I loved him, and how just pouring love onto him, that he was good with that. He liked that. He liked private words of affirmation and love and stuff being poured over him, but he didn't like it in such a public way, especially like after college. I think he was much more outgoing and boisterous and stuff in high school and college. But once he got out, he started kind of, getting his big boy pants on and becoming more reserved and different things. So I've gone on such a major tangent here. But anyway, he was simply irresistible. He got that superlative in high school, and I felt like it always suited him. Even when I met him as just my roommate and friend, I always thought that way of him. Like, he's so lovable. He's so likable. It's, like, you can bring him anywhere with whatever group and he will get along with everybody and everyone loves him. Like, he is just a very lovable person. And yeah, he was simply irresistible. I just know he's probably like, stop saying that out loud. But anyway, like, I remember this one time we went to his infusion, and like, I was very pregnant, very obviously pregnant. I was a very obviously pregnant person for both pregnancies. Like, my belly, like, I didn't gain weight in other places, just my belly would be this perfectly big round belly, and everything else looked normal. So it was pretty obvious whenever I've been pregnant. And actually, that's like my favorite version of my body, is like second trimester pregnant body. That's my favorite version of my body. So we had gone to one of his infusions, and I had hung out with him, and like, he was excited to just like show me around and introduce me to his favorite nurses and be like, here's my pregnant wife and here's our baby. Look at this baby in the belly. Like, I remember, I want to say it was like one of those times where I had come with him. We were chilling. He was getting his infusion. But just imagine the scene. You walk up to this huge medical facility, state-of-the-art, beautiful medical facility. You walk up to the elevators. You go to the oncology ward. You go to check in for your appointment before, well, first of all, you go to your lab work. Then he would always show up. Anytime he did infusions, he would have to do lab work first. Those infusions were very, very hard on people's livers. So that was one of the main first things that was like, if your liver can't take this, we can't do this. So thankfully it was able to take it, but that's what you get tested. And if the liver numbers are in a certain range, he wasn't allowed to get an infusion that day. But so it always started off, we'd walk in, he goes to get his blood work. Then we start making our way up to the oncology department, and yeah, you're walking up, young looking guy, good looking guy, smiley, looks healthy and normal. Wouldn't think he's a cancer patient, walking up with his wife. These two people look young. One of them's obviously pregnant. The other one's obviously the partner. And you're walking towards this oncology room, this oncology waiting area. It's just a sad scene. It's a sad thing to think about. Like, and I can only imagine what some of the folks in there were thinking, especially because they're all usually older than us. Usually it was a bunch of grandmas and grandpas that we were kind of walking up near. I could feel the thoughts. I could feel them thinking, like, what are they doing here? Oh my God, I hope neither of them have cancer. She's pregnant. Oh my God. I could just feel the thoughts, because that's what I would be thinking in my head, is like, oh no, that is not, you don't want to think about that. You don't want to see that. But that was our reality. Walking up, pregnant wife in tow, young dude with cancer, doing our appointment. From the appointment, we go straight to infusion. And that would be kind of a typical day for Justin getting his treatment there. Obviously, sometimes we would talk about scans. They would go over the scans, and that was always a very overwhelming and anxiety-producing day, is the day that we're going to look at scans. So we do the infusion. He's showing me off to all the nurses, and there's always really great volunteers at the Mayo Clinic that are offering different things to all the patients. There's amazing pianists that were that were always there in some of the areas doing their music. There was a guitar player who would come around and play different things on different days. Like they might do like a 90s day or a classic rock or something like that. So they'd have like an acoustic guitarist in the middle of the infusion unit, and they would have like a, what do they call it? Like a emotional support dog. It'd be like a golden retriever walking around that you could pet. There would be people offering hand and arm massages with lotion. So they had a lot of really, really beautiful offerings for people undergoing these treatments. So we were there doing our treatment, and then on our way back, I'm pretty sure it was one of these days because I feel like I was pregnant, I was driving. He would have had just done his infusion, and we were kind of talking about the song that, like some of the songs that I wanted to sing to our baby girl the way that I had done for our son. And I don't know if it just happened to come up on the radio or if he chose it and kind of proposed it as the song, but regardless, it became his choice for baby girl for her song. And it's the Lauryn Hill version of, what's it called? You're just too good to be true. Can't take my eyes off of you. Yeah, it was Can't Take My Eyes Off of You. I remember when he announced that is the song that he wants to sing to her, because I was like, what's the song you want to sing to her? He was like, that's the one. Either he put it on or it came on and he said this one. I feel like he put it on. I can't remember, but he chose that one, and I started crying while driving. It brought tears to my eyes. It made me so emotional and so happy. I was like, that's just the sweetest song ever for a baby girl from her dad. And he would sing that song to my belly like every night. Once we selected that song, we would do belly time, and I would just lay in bed next to him, rubbing his head, and he would sing that song to my belly, to the baby. And I have so many videos of him doing that, and it was just one of the sweetest, most tender moments of our life at that time that I'll cherish. Always, I'll never forget that. And I want his daughter to know that he loved her so much and would sing that to her, and he loved her when she was just a little tiny kidney bean size baby, human fetus inside of my belly. But he was meant to be a dad, and he loved being a dad, even in those moments where you can't even hold your baby yet, but he was holding her from the outside. All right. Well, I think this is a good place to stop. I had originally intended on making this episode to include the things we did to help me after Justin passed, things that we anticipated would help. And I've realized that this story time became longer than I expected, and I hope that's okay with everyone, just to allow me this opportunity to share the full breadth of this story and what we've been through. So I do appreciate that, and you being here with me as I kind of tell this story and allow the story to lead me. And so I'm going to make this episode 2 parts. So this first part was to really paint the picture of what it means to fight cancer on a daily basis through our experience. I can't speak for everybody, but I can just share what I watched and witnessed in my spouse as he accepted his fate and chose how he wanted to go about his final bit of time on earth. So that's kind of what this part 1 was, and the next part is going to be more of that practical things that we actually did that really helped to set things up in a way
for success later once Justin passed as much as possible, in his absence. So I'm going to wrap this episode up here. And I always want to wrap up with some gratitude. So I just want to express my gratitude for being able to be alive, be experiencing life on Earth. I'm grateful that I'm here to and able and willing to tell this story. And I just encourage everybody to take this opportunity to also express some gratitude, whether you express it out loud or to somebody. Both are so nourishing and healing and strength building. So I encourage you all to also take the opportunity when this episode ends to just express out loud or internally 1 or 3 or more things that you are grateful for. And I'll catch you in part 2 of episode 3 for Our Cancer Journey. I'm Isabel, and this is From Mud. Be well. Au revoir.